This is First Sergeant Carwood Lipton. He has no rank to command an officer, no authority to issue orders to a captain, and no idea his commanding officer has already broken. And yet, in the freezing pine forest outside Bastogne in January 1945, he's the only thing keeping Easy Company alive. When we talk about leadership in war movies, we usually talk about the big moments. The rousing speeches, the men charging the hill, the officer standing tall in the face of enemy fire. But what happens when the speeches are done? What happens when there's no hill to charge, only a frozen hole to freeze in? What happens when the men have been pushed so far past their physical and psychological limits that they've completely given up? Today, I'm going to break down the quietest masterclass in leadership ever put on a war screen. Before we look at the specific scenes that make this episode a masterpiece, we need to understand the hell these men were actually living in. On December 16th, 1944, the Germans launched their massive Ardennes offensive, creating what we now call the Battle of the Bulge. The 101st Airborne Division was rushed to the vital crossroads town of Bastogne, completely surrounded, heavily outnumbered, entirely cut off from supply lines. When the German commander demanded their surrender, Brigadier General Anthony McAuliffe sent back a one-word reply: nuts. That defiance is legendary. The reality on the ground was absolute misery. Easy Company, 2nd Battalion, 506th Parachute Infantry Regiment, was dug into shallow foxholes in deep snow just outside the German-held town of Foy. Sub-zero cold, no winter gear, no white camouflage, desperately little ammunition or medical supplies, frostbite and trench foot rampant, and worst of all, the daily artillery barrages. 88mm and mortar rounds bursting in the tops of the pine trees, sending razor-sharp wooden splinters and jagged shrapnel straight down into the foxholes. In the episode's voiceover, Lipton says it reminded him of fireworks on the 4th of July, the way the shells burst in the canopy overhead. The man watched the forest explode around his friends and thought of summer. Between January 9th and January 13th, Easy Company suffered its heaviest casualties of the entire war. To make matters worse, their commanding officer was Lieutenant Norman S. Dyke Jr., known to the men as Foxhole Norman, a well-connected officer parachuted in from Regimental HQ. Frequently absent from the line, taking mysterious walks to the rear, completely disconnected from the suffering of his men. Standing in the vacuum of that failed leadership was First Sergeant Clifford Carwood Lipton from Huntington, West Virginia. He'd lost his father in an automobile accident at age 10. Enlisted in August 1942 after reading a Life magazine article about how hard paratrooper training was. One of Easy Company's first 4 privates at Camp Toccoa. Earned a Bronze Star at Brecourt Manor on D-Day, a Purple Heart at Carentan. By the time they reached Bastogne, Lipton was the bedrock of the company. We see the dynamic between Dyke and Lipton established early in the episode. He's technically subordinate to Dyke, but every man in the company already looks to him for survival. There's a deeply telling scene where Dyke wanders up to Lipton, makes small talk, asks where he's from. Lipton answers patiently. Dyke asks about his father. Lipton tells him killed in a car accident when he was 10. Dyke says that's sad and moves on without a beat, then asks what made him join the paratroopers. Lipton gives him a real answer, and then right as Lipton tries to ask Dyke where he's from,
Where are you from, sir?
mid-sentence. This is a man performing the rituals of subordination while quietly carrying the whole burden of command. He protects the illusion of Dyke's authority because the men need a chain of command, even if the top link is broken. Because the commanding officer is absent, Lipton's actual method of leadership is completely grounded. He walks the line, hole by hole, a cigarette, a bad joke, a status check, an ammo count. He makes sure every man knows someone is looking out for them. And this brings us to the unexploded shell scene. During an artillery barrage, Lipton pulls loose into his foxhole. A massive German shell lands directly between them. A dud. They stare at it. Then Luz shakily pulls out a cigarette, and Lipton reaches over and takes it.
You can smoke.
I don't.
Under direct shell fire, a dud round between his feet, and his response is to share a smoke. Calm is contagious. He's not pretending to be unafraid. He knows the danger exactly as well as Luz does. Leadership is the mastery of your outward reaction to fear. The men borrow your calm when they've run out of their own, but calm can only protect you from so much. The episode is called The Breaking Point for a reason. The company had already lost Corporal Hubler. The Luger he'd finally gotten his hands on fired in his pants pocket and severed his femoral artery, dead before anyone could help him. But then comes the barrage. A shell takes Joe Toy's leg. Guarnero runs out to drag him back. Another shell hits. Guarnero's leg is gone too. One man running out to save his friend, and the war takes them both in the same minute. Buck Compton, stalwart, beloved, a man who'd held it together through everything, stands over them, drops his helmet and his weapon, and is gone. Through all this chaos, Luz reaches Lipton. This is the exact moment a military unit shatters. Officers gone, broken, or hiding. Lipton glues it back together himself. As Dick Winters later wrote, he was the glue that held Easy Company together. But Lipton knows the glue is failing. The attack on Foy is coming, and if Norman Dyke leads it, people die. So he walks back to find Captain Dick Winters, finds him outside smoking. Winters notices the cigarette in Lipton's hand. They exchange a few words. Winters asks about Easy's status. Lipton tells him the men are good, he has confidence in them. Then he steels himself.
But on the other hand, I have no confidence in our CO, sir. Lieutenant Dyke is an empty uniform, Captain. He's not there, sir.
He just told a captain that a lieutenant is incompetent, without anger, without ego, framed entirely around the survival of the men. And Winters pushes back. Dyke will be there tomorrow. Lipton doesn't blink.
I gotta tell you, sir, I think he's gonna get a lot of Easy Company men killed.
Thank you, Sergeant. That'll be all.
Yes, sir.
No validation, no promise. A cold professional thank you, that'll be all. Lipton walks back to the line, not knowing if he just threw his career at a wall for nothing. But watch what happens. Winters quietly positions Lieutenant Ronald Spires, a fiercely capable officer from Dog Company, right at his side as the attack begins. Lipton's words shifted the chain of command. Nobody ever knew he was the one who pushed the domino. The assault on Foy begins, and exactly as Lipton predicted, Dyke falls apart, freezes in the middle of the field, orders the men to halt behind haystacks. They're exposed, dying. Winters, watching from the ridge, nearly runs in himself. Colonel Sink physically restrains him. He turns to Spears. Spears, get up there and relieve Dyke and take that attack on in. What follows is legendary. Spears sprints through fire, relieves Dyke, drives the assault forward, then makes his mythical run straight through German lines to link up with the company, then back the same way. Lipton narrates it. At first the Germans didn't shoot at him. I think they couldn't quite believe what they were seeing. The astounding thing was, after he hooked up with I Company, he came back. Foy is taken. A second sniper opens up on the celebrating men. 2 down, Lipton and Shifty take cover behind a building. Lipton spots the position. He says 4 words to Shifty. Second floor, building on the right. Don't miss, Shifty. Then he runs into the open, drawing the fire. The sniper shoots and misses. Shifty fires once. Done. No speech, no glory. He spotted the problem, set up the shot, used himself as the mechanism. After Foy, 2 more towns. Then that night, in a convent in Rachamps, the sisters bring in their choir to sing for the men. Lipton sits with a notebook. 145 men went into Bastogne. 63 walked out. He records every name without ceremony. That's the part of leadership nobody teaches. The accounting. Then comes the closing scene. Spears walks up to Lipton. The conversation turns to the dark legends, the rumor about German POWs and cigarettes on D-Day. Spears doesn't deny it. Instead, he talks about Tertius, a Roman centurion, and the value of letting the myth live. Lipton quietly holds his own, and then Spears drops it entirely. Lipton tells him the men are glad to finally have a good commanding officer. Spears shakes his head, tells Lipton the men have always had a good leader, describes him, led them into Boisjacques, held them together through the shelling, kept their spirits up, kept them focused, then asks if Lipton has any idea who he's talking about. Lipton says no.
Hell, it was you first, Sergeant. Ever since Winter's May Battalion, you've been the leader of Easy Company.
He didn't know. He genuinely didn't know. Too focused on keeping everyone else alive to ever think of himself as the one holding it together. And then the final piece.
Winter's put in for a battlefield commission and Sink approved on your behalf. You should get the official nod in a few days. Congratulations, Lieutenant.
At the end of the day, this episode whispers a truth that resonates through the history of warfare. George R.R. Martin once wrote that power resides where men believe it resides. In the frozen woods of Bastogne, power didn't reside in the silver bar on Norman Dyke's helmet. It resided in the mud, the frost, and the quiet resilience of Carwood Lipton. As Dick Winters said, he was the glue that held Easy Company together. Real leadership in war isn't just the man who charges through enemy lines. That's Spears, and his moment is the stuff of legend. It's also the man who keeps men alive long enough and functional enough for that legendary moment to even be possible. Lipton never asked for the title, never demanded salutes or obedience. He just did the grueling work of keeping his brothers alive until someone official finally noticed. He later said that Battlefield Commission was the greatest honor of his life, greater than the Bronze Stars and the Purple Hearts he carried home. When the men around you have already given up, leadership isn't loud. It's a sergeant walking the line in the snow, lighting a cigarette he doesn't smoke, and making you believe, for one more miserable freezing day, that you're going to make it home. So if you made it this far, thank you so much for watching. Leave a comment, drop a like, and click to subscribe. Your support helps the channel grow and allows me to keep diving into the history and characters of these incredible shows. See you next time.